next? OMG LMAO? Will they know how to talk without cell phones? To hold hands before they commit? Cause their digits are gone and their thumbs have grown long from Instagram, Snapchats, and Twits. So put down your iPhone tonight, your laptop and Android too. Your status on Facebook's alright, and I'm feeling lonesome and blue. Now I decay. What should I do? I need your sweet love, HBU. I need your attention, so once more I'll mention you could have had action, but your fingers in traction. I won't feel so lonely, my love, if you hold me. Put down your iPhone tonight.
This is Karen with My I'm Possible Dream, and I'm with Evie and Steve today, and we are going to be talking music and dreams and possibilities, and I'm so excited to be here. Just a side note, Evie happens to be a distant cousin, and I've been living here in Cleveland since 1981, and I didn't even know she existed until about 6 months ago.
Right.
So welcome, cousin.
Same to you, my dear.
So tell me about this music that you're producing and this new CD that you have out.
We've been married for 34 years. I have spent my professional career as a musician, pretty much. Done a little bit of this and that, but focused in on teaching, accompanying, doing a lot of theater, working as a musical theater director. And you have
And
been?
I was a musician in high school. That was sort of my whole life. And I did some music in college, and then I kind of let it go for a while. And then we still don't know exactly how we started singing together. We kind of sort of fell into it, I think, around going to open mics, maybe at the Barking Spider.
I started, after many years of being a musical theater director, I decided that I had something to say, that I was tired of just looking at people's derrieres and coaching them to realize their potential. So I did a few open mics, and honestly, dear, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I think you started as a roadie.
Okay, that's fine.
And then
That's an honorable profession.
it was necessary at the time.
Yeah.
And then I maybe expressed. I don't know. I have no idea. We did
Well, I mean,
ingenuity
I've
together.
been playing the guitar sort of in an amateur way, you know, for most of my life, and I think we just started singing together at home, and we worked out some. We found that our voices really worked well together
Right.
in harmony. And
Right.
we were able to arrange some of your songs, and I think we just had a desire to kind of share that with people.
We did, and then we came up with our name, which is Even Steven, actually.
Even Steven.
Right. Eve apostrophe N apostrophe Stephen, Stephen. And the reason for that is because as Steve and Evie, for the years, we've always gotten, oh, Steve and Edie.
Ah,
And as
okay.
Evie, I'm an Eve. Evie is long for Eve, but as it like Evelyn Siegel, there's
Right.
Another cousin. There's like actually 3 Evies in the family. Okay, so I would explain to people I would get called Easy and Edie and EB and I'd say no, E with a V like Victor. And then when we started saying even Steven, and people said, wow, that's so cute. So I
do
think
like
we had the
that.
name before we had the concept, perhaps, just as we were starting. But also in our marriage, which is 34 years long, my second marriage, Stephen adopted our 2 older daughters when they were about 6 and 4 when we got married. As a married couple, we've grown up in a time different than the way we were raised, although I think you had a much more egalitarian household than I did. In my house, it was very typically, I'm being raised to find a husband and
Right.
and take care of him.
I understand that
and
one.
feed people. I know
Sure.
you do. And in our relationship, there's been an effort which is really bearing fruit now. We're a team. We are a team, and I
So
think
what you're trying to say is that the name
Even
reflects
Stephen.
sort of the egalitarian nature of the
Right,
relationship.
right. It's not
Mhm.
being subservient. We're both sort of, we have to tussle through our differences, but everybody's opinion, I think, is given equal weight.
Well, my role model in my family, I mean, my dad was very involved with our day-to-day lives, in terms of helping with chores and, cooking and all that kind of stuff. So there was no chauvinism necessarily. So, but it's been, that's been sort of the way we blended our family experiences in our relationship.
So let's go back. You two met
Kent State, at Kent.
at Kent.
We met in 1978, not directly. We met there. I had left my first husband. I had two very small children, 2.5 and 8 months. And I got involved with the protest to move the gym that they wanted.
No, to build, it was like they moved the gym.
I got involved in the protest
Kent wanted
to
to
move
build,
it.
yeah, they wanted
right.
to build
They
the
wanted
gym
to build
on
a gym on the
the
site
of
of
the
the
shootings. Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
And Stephen sort of had left that summer, was on the periphery, and then we sort of met through the radio, the transistor radio. I liked you. I thought you were cute. So I think I orchestrated that.
Oh, yeah, my
With the-
roommate and I were selling
Yes, you were selling
electronics at the time. Yeah, right.
Exactly. But then we wound up working together in a vegetarian restaurant, the only vegetarian restaurant in Kent, called the Red Radish.
Right.
Stephen, you were a dishwasher, right?
Mhm.
And I finagled my way, that means got my way, finagled my way in there to sing, to do like open mic. And then got myself a job there as a waitress. And I would go to work, he'd be wearing a red t-shirt, I'd be wearing a red t-shirt, not planned. And I'd say, whoa, look at that, it's Casper. And so we actually started dating in 1978. We left Kent eventually. The gym was built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we went to live on our friend's farm for a summer.
In Richfield.
In Richfield. And then Stephen asked me to marry him.
Mhm.
And I said yes. And then we moved to Cleveland in 1980 with both of our families were up here. And so we thought, well, it's time to go back, make some peace with mom and dad, all that kind of stuff, and get some marketable skills is what we thought.
Sure.
We thought we'd be here for a couple of years and then go back to the country to farm and do. Well, that was 1980.
Yeah.
Do the math.
Yeah.
Mom and dad said, hey, let us give you a down payment on a house, and here we are. And we raised our children here, which was good. We have 3 children blended. We have 2 children blended, and then Stephen, they're blended, and Stephen adopted them. And then we have a 27-year-old daughter who is, so we have 3 girls.
Wonderful.
Now everybody's up here in Cleveland Heights. So we're real excited after 10 years of our youngest being done in Columbus, finishing school and all that.
So all the family is here now.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
3 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters, and one who just graduated from high school.
Right.
Wow.
And then our other, Maddie's going into high school this year.
13-year-old, yeah. No,
Right.
no, 8th grade.
Oh, 8th grade, right.
Right.
And then Milo.
Milo,
who's
we
gonna
have
be
the
3 in November.
3, the first boy in 2 generations, and we get the privilege. We've been very involved in all of our grandchildren's lives. So
Which has been a
now
blessing, yeah.
it's been a big blessing, but now we're on this enterprise, so it's sort of the dynamic is changing, but it's great to have the kids up here, working on reestablishing relationships as adults and doing that dance. And but we're very proud of them, and it just so happens that one son-in-law plays the bass and the other plays the drums. So they played with us at Hessler Street.
Yeah,
that was the first
Oh,
time we
how nice
performed.
is that?
It was
Yeah,
great.
it was
So
great.
you
was
you
great.
seem to play all over the area.
We're trying.
We're trying to, yeah. I mean, I think what's really been helpful to us is to establish the relationship with the North Union Farmers Market.
Mhm.
Emma
Anderson.
Anderson has been very helpful in scheduling us, and it's been a great venue, because so many people come through shopping, and it's just great to have people sort of stop and listen. And we're typically set up across from where they have tables and chairs set up, like people will buy food and they'll sit down and eat. And so, we made some contacts with people. We've been able to actually get other music gigs from people who walked by and liked what we were doing, and asked us to. I think we did a wedding reception and things like that. So it's been very very helpful for us, and because they're in so many different locations around the greater Cleveland area, we do get to the west side, on the east side, and it's just opened up a lot of opportunities.
Right, this summer we're singing at Crocker Park, Ohio City, Shaker Square will be there this Saturday, and Chagrin Falls, and Star Plaza. And then we're also exploring other things. I mean, we'll sing anywhere for any.
Yeah, we just started.
Anybody.
We just sang last week at the First Baptist Farmers Market.
Right, we're going to go back there. Hopefully this afternoon. It's going to clear up a little bit. But what we're trying to do is, we believe people react to our music. We see it viscerally. We see people, tapping fingers and like singing along.
Right.
And even though we have and we do original music, at this point in time, we really want people to listen just to us being musicians together, because it makes us happy when people get engaged. Right. Our hero is Pete Seeger in terms of
very good.
Yeah, and we definitely feel that the culture that we live in has reduced people singing together. People are sung at. Music is everywhere. There's thousands and thousands of people making music, and it's just, first of all, if you sing, if you make music yourself, it changes your personal vibration and it changes the energy around you. So if we can manage to stop fussing at each other and sit down and start singing, it usually, we feel better afterwards. And what we want to be part of, and this is where you and I connected in terms of Alex and I'm Possible.
Right.
We want to be part of the energy for change and for being positive. Music is one way to do that. Being urban farmers is another way to do that. Building community is to do that. Sustainability. We're well aware what's going on politically, and we're well aware what's going on in the world. We feel extremely blessed to have our health, to have our family nearby, to have a beautiful, a nice home. And it's sort of payback time now. I'm coming up on my 50th high school reunion, end of the month. And I just had to write my memory page up there. What have you done in the last 50 years? This is sort of where we're focused. Although Stephen will have to go back to cooking this year, and I'll continue teaching privately and freelancing.
Well, most musicians I know have a full-time job.
Absolutely, they surely do.
So we have
except for Paul McCartney.
Yeah, well, there's a few. There's
a
Taylor
few,
Swift.
right? So I think we're realistic, but I think there's a combination of being realistic, but we have to make our dream happen. We have to try.
Absolutely.
We have to try. And one of the hard things for me as an Aries person, female, has been not being able to travel, move around as much as I would like. So now that our children are gone, and our grandchildren are well on their way, and it's not like we're leaving Cleveland at this point. I mean, we're Cleveland-based, but we're looking for opportunities. Next summer specifically, we'll be hopefully doing festivals. There's music festivals everywhere.
Even festivals in Cleveland.
Sure.
Right. So we're getting in, our first task is to become good at what we do, figure out what we want to say, who our peeps are, as my friend Carlos Jones told me, when I said, Carlos, I want to do this. Find your peeps. And that's all been a challenge. Who are we? What do we want to say? What's our music about? So,
well, with your 50th reunion coming up, in fact, I know a number of people from your class. In fact,
really?
One in particular is Luke Krause, and he has an organization called Better Outcomes, and he has basically the same concept, but not with music. So when you take his idea of better outcomes,
Right.
of creating dialogue, he wants to use words the same way you want to use music.
Okay.
And there is something about our generation that is now looking back and saying, you know, we have to make this better
Right.
for our children.
Tikkun olam.
And there is some good out there.
Oh,
Even
there's
though
lots of
it
good.
feels like there's a lot of bad out there. So the way we can do that is through those possibilities. Your music. Your music in your farming. Your music in your cooking.
Yep.
Your music and your knowledge.
Right.
And it would be a good thing if we could all wake up every morning and think about one good thing. I see people doing this on Facebook, but I think sometimes it's just words. You know, what am I grateful for today? Oh, I'm grateful for my Aunt Joe. But you don't tell us what
What she
so
gave
special
you.
about. What,
Right.
okay, let's be grateful for something and let's take it somewhere. And that's what I see you doing with your music. And that is very, very special to me. You're taking it to all these different places. And like I said earlier, I'm sure there are people who just walk past you,
So,
but they're still hearing it.
oh, absolutely.
And
Right.
that's the
And
importance.
they're the ones that are mouthing the words to songs that they know. I'm not, you know, there was a time for us to share original music. Like one of my songs that's on the CD is,
Yep.
you know, Put Down Your iPhone Tonight. That's the newest song on there. There's a time for that. Right now, we want people to hear us. We want to connect with them. So if we're singing In My Life, or you know, we're singing Beatles, or we're singing James Taylor, or we're singing no Taylor Swift. Yet.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, you know, she was a good tune, you know,
Yep.
like, but it's also generational. You know, she's going to write about her life and her story.
Right.
We pick the music and we write the songs that are about us. You know, and right now we're not in the angst stage. We don't have any like breakup songs right now. We sing other people's
Well,
breakup
angst
songs.
for a middle-aged couple is different than angst for a teenager.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I just want to go back to what you said about Pete Seeger. I can't remember what video it is of him, but it's just a very powerful image for me. He was sort of solo in the stage, big auditorium, and he was able to get a whole auditorium of people to sing not just in unison, but in three-part harmony. He divided the audience up into three different parts and was able to get, and it was so much fun to see how he would pick out some guy who was sitting there with his arms folded, and he would sort of cajole him
Target
into,
him.
you know, participating, and the sound that he was able to get from that audience is just incredible. And then people, it breaks through. People realize, wow, we can really sing together, and it's much more than just me singing, you know.
Well, you know, I always say if you have 100 people talking in a room at the same time, it's chaotic. If you have 100 people singing, it's glorious
It is.
to me. And the use of the human voice, the ability to express, it's unique. Everyone is their instrument, and yet we've lost that as a society. We're passive. One of the things we do is go do children's programs. And, well, we did a couple of programs last summer where we'd leave and we'd look at each other and we'd say, these poor children, they're catatonic, literally. You know, it's
They're
not...
so used to watching someone sing a song on TV and not really doing it with the person. You know, that whole concept of us being there, present with them, rather than just something that's removed from them and that's entertaining them. You know. And the other thing I wanted to say too about, you know, before we go on, was just the whole idea of music engaging your whole mind.
Right.
You know, the auditory process, processing words and music at the same time, engages every aspect of your mind. And so even if a person's walking by at the market we're affecting their thoughts, you know. And what's wonderful about music too is that you can say things with music that important things that you couldn't necessarily say in a speech or as a diatribe against something, you know,
Right.
a political speech. You can, you know, Woody and Pete were great at doing those kind of things where they would do talking blues, and they would talk about issues that were important to their generation, but they did it in a humorous way that got people laughing and took their guard down. And then because of the magic of music, the message is able to break through, and hopefully it makes psychic change in the person, you know.
Well, I understand that because when my son Alex wrote his first song with his uncle, he wrote Into the Light, and it was how he saw himself as being on the autism spectrum, but how he saw other people seeing him as well. And when people hear that song, they almost freeze in time because they start to understand what he is saying,
Right.
but they also see what they see as well. He then wrote a song called Walk a Mile, and Walk a Mile was written in the midst of a meltdown. He had had a fight with his dad and I, and he just thought that we were the world's worst and went into one of those autistic meltdowns. Came home, slammed the door, went into his room. 20 minutes later, he came to me with a pad of paper, and he said, "Read this." And when I read the words, I said, "That is my song." He said, "No, it's mine." But it's everybody's song if you think
Right,
about
right.
it.
Right.
Because if we could walk in each other's shoes,
Right.
we'd be tolerant of each other. It would be a peaceful, perfect world. So I hear what you're saying, that the words of a song are so much easier for a lot of people than giving a speech. Now, luckily, Alex can do both, but there are a lot of people who can't.
Right.
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 And the music has a variety to it as well.
Well, what Stephen said, if they put electrodes on your head, music is the only thing that lights up every part of your brain, because it's vibrational, it's sensational, it's pitch, you know, it's clarity with words. It affects the brain that powerfully, which is why when they've done the testing of, you know, the whole movement to play music and play classical music, to teach so your children are better readers and they do better with science and math. All these things are being proven. You know, I think Stephen and I, not to offend anybody in the autistic community, because I've had I told you I had a
Right.
Asperger's student as one of my piano students, and that was when I first learned to work with a child
Sure.
who was on the spectrum. But I've said for years, if we ever break up, it will be for autistic differences. You know, it's partly
Instead of
because
artistic differences.
yes, instead
Yeah.
of artistic, yes, dear, because we go into our own little worlds, so to speak, and can be very content there. And I think that one of the reasons that music again is calming and soothing, depending what your choices are, what you choose to listen to, is because we live in a very overstimulating world. We live, even as people who may not be on a spectrum or may not have any kind of issues at all, the healthiest, wellest person has to discern, what am I going to focus on? You're being bombarded, by advertising, by this, be this. So at this point of our lives, we've lived long enough to have said, did that, done there, okay, now we don't want to do that anymore. We were like many people. Downsizing is good. Less is better. Being in community is better than sitting at home surfing here on my television. Better that we should be out at the garden. And Stephen, who's a pretty quiet person, you can tell who he has the lion's share. But no, he speaks in there, he's got things to say. But the changing of the garden out there, the building of the garden out there, people stop. they talk.
Well, we even invited neighbors to participate. You know, it's not a full-blown community garden by any means, but you know, we invited people on our street to participate, and 3 neighbors actually took us up on the offer, and it's been nice to, you know, be out there and then they have someone come over to tend their garden, and you know, we end up talking about gardening or other, you know, things that are happening with us. And the interesting part about that whole property was that before there was a house there that had been foreclosed, and the county deemed that it was, you know, not salvageable. So they took it down, and we had the option to buy the property. And so, but we've watched this transformation from it being a very dark and sort of negative space to one that's been, you know, filled with light. You know, there's been this whole community aspect about it, place where the energy has just completely been transformed, and it's partly just, I think, because of the intention that we had to
heal.
make it a space. We have to heal that space.
We
and
lived
to
here
make
for
it a space where people could come together and be in community. So.
We lived here for 25 years. We've lived here for 25 years, and it was literally, I went through years of saying, we're going to have to move. The next bunch of crazy, insane people that move into that house, the house just had that energy. So we've taken something that was very toxic, and that's what we're finding. Cleveland Heights is a very sustainable community. People are allowed to have 4 chickens. They're allowed to grow bees. The things that we're growing out there, I mean, I go out there to pick kale for dinner. I mean, peas, carrots, sweet potatoes. We're learning how to grow food and preserve food, which I think is not just economically important. I think it's important, period.
Right.
They've proven that one of the that digging your hands in the soil is an antidepressant. Imagine that. People are depressed all over the place, and gee, wow, it's hard to plant and cement. You know, we've made our cities very, very difficult for humans in many ways, and people are reclaiming that, and that's what building community is about. It's about being happy, Karen. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
about learning about, you were telling us a story, like I made a decision one day, I woke up and said, I'm going to be happy. I'm writing a book. It's called The Transformation Generation. It's us. Didn't I tell you that?
No.
Oh, yes.
Oh, this is
You're
wonderful.
On record.
No. Now I have to know. I'm
Yes,
writing it down,
perfect.
putting it down there because it's called The Transformation Generation. It is us. I was born in 1947, born into a time when the world was one way in my culture, where I came from, and I was supposed to do A, B, C, and D.
Right.
Like if you
Same
did A,
me.
B, C, and D, then you ensured that you were going to have a good quality life. Okay, and somewhere, like it was like in the 60s, can we say? You know, everything diametrically it just turned. The world changed. For better, for worse. You know, the better part was, you know, a lot of people were going over to Eastern countries and learning about meditation and deep central prayer and chanting. They brought those things back with them. You know, worse because, you know, people like us, I'm going to say that Liberty, I'll speak for myself, but we've had enough conversations about it to think we're both, even Stephen on this one, didn't fit in. Round peg, square holes.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of positive change. I mean, there are things that needed to be questioned about the way society was set up, you know, in terms of human rights, civil rights, you know, sexism, you know,
racism,
right? I mean, so I mean, there was, and our generation, I think, did do a lot of work to sort of question those things and try to find new ways of living.
Right.
And I think there's still, I think the spirit still is there. It's just hard to work against the forces in society which don't want people to be sort of individualistic and to be self-expressive.
Well, and that's the interesting part, because in schools we've told students we want you to be individuals, and yet as soon as you become an individual, it's
you need
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Thank God they didn't have those labels and
Yeah.
drugs when we were little, because seriously, I know, no, hands down, I know I'm ADD. I mean, I understand that in terms of, diagnosis and all that kind of stuff, but there are other ways to deal with that. Meditation
Right.
is a way to teach your brain to focus and to calm down. Thinking, turning off the TV, like we routinely, TV may be on. I have to admit, I do like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. But we holler like, turn off that NBC, it's negative. I don't need to know that stuff. And within 5 minutes of waking up, I've been at the computer. I know every cataclysm and disaster that has happened worldwide for the day.
Right.
Because all day long, all I'm going to hear on that feed is the same stories.
Well, it was interesting. I was talking to a friend of ours who's he's been a Buddhist, I think, and has had a meditative practice for a long time. He's a vegan, and he said that he will not touch any of his electronic equipment until he's meditated in the morning. The first thing he does is to go
Right.
to a space and to meditate, and then
Right.
he engages with that. And then the other interesting thing he said, and I hadn't thought about it, was that when he comes home from being out in the world and working, he spends time meditating again before he proceeds with the rest of his evening as a way to decompress and to refocus his
Right.
mind
Today in my blog, I was talking about the fact that when I was growing up, life, as we always say, was so much better. It wasn't that it was so much better, but we did things at a slower pace.
Yes.
I remember my dad would come home from work, basically at the same time every night. We ate dinner as a family.
Right.
In the summertime, my parents were sitting out on the porch, reading the newspaper, talking to the other neighbors, and as kids, we were playing outside. But today, fathers and mothers come home at
Whenever.
all different hours,
Right.
okay? The kids are playing video games
Right.
or watching TV. Nobody really is outside anymore. Nobody really knows their neighbors. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you know your neighbors. I live in a condo, and I waved to a couple people, but I don't think I even know anybody's name. It's not like it used to be, and there just seems like there's no time to do anything. This week I've had 8 podcasts scheduled,
Right.
and 7 have been canceled to be rescheduled because everybody's so busy.
Oh, gosh.
And you wonder, what are you so busy doing? Now,
Right.
6 of those 7 do not work.
Huh.
So you just wonder,
They're busy. They're on the computer.
They're
They're
on the-
shopping. They're playing Scrabble, and they're playing Crush Saga or whatever the Candy Crush.
Candy Crush.
I mean, people. If you were a conspirator,
Yeah.
if you were a theorist about conspiracies, you might think that there was some motivation behind that, and there is. I mean, there is, but it doesn't matter. At a point,
Right.
it doesn't matter. We need to keep our children as safe as we can. You cannot control things that happen. As my husband has said so often to me over the years, we can only control our reaction to it. And I was taught, I lived in an environment where we reacted hysterically and, aggressively to everything. I've had to relearn that behavior. Am I done? Am I perfect? Can I just be like a calm sea, when something happens? No, but I'm better. And I'm better at not getting so depressed over things that I can't handle. I mean, really, there's some big changes. Stephen is actually a cook by profession, and he works at Case Western, so during the school year, he feeds about 1,500, 2,000 students a day.
I'm part of the team.
Not
But
him.
but that's even interesting. The company I work for, their motto or their business model is to be sustainable, because they realize that to be shipping food from California on a regular basis, obviously in the wintertime you have to ship from other places, but they try to source locally for a lot of what we use in the summer, spring, and fall. And we compost all our organic material, and We have certain events during the school year that kind of highlight what we're doing to the students so they understand why we do the things we do. You know, like we make all our stuff from scratch rather than
Farm to
frozen and
table.
processed food. Yeah, farm to fork kind of things, you know. So there is a consciousness shift that way, even at the business level. But I'm not sure how that related to what you were saying.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking that as you go through the CD, Karen, there are songs that pertain to everything we're
Oh.
talking about. There's a song called Grow Me a Garden. I wrote it when I was 20. Okay, there's iPhone, which is about people not connecting and people being disconnected. There is I Want My Spirit to Be Holy, which is about, we're both, I think, spiritual seekers, and everyone's on their own individual path. That's my latest theory. Everyone's on their own individual path, and you're constantly going to be having lessons put in front of your face, you know, to see, did you learn it yet? You know, have you got
Right.
it? Okay, and
Or what's the choice?
or
Yeah.
what's the choice? We have free will as human beings. So at 68 years of age, at this point, I had someone tell me that I acted like I was 18 the other day. I was like,
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
because I'm happier
Yeah.
now than I sure was. I wish I knew at 18 what I know now, but that's not the way it works. Okay, by the time you figure it out, Lord willing, you are over. You're older, okay, and maybe over too.
Yeah.
But that's the point is, like, all we've got, like, is this day. So I know who you're talking about in terms of, this is a friend who runs All Faith Pantry. This is a man who feeds people, John Vishnauskas, and he collects food and he goes to elderly people and shut-ins. He brings them food. And he's made a decision to spend his life in service. At this point, I think that's where we are in our lives. It's like you serve spirit, you serve the God of your understanding. It's not your traditional go to church, go to temple, that's just not who we are, although there is a spiritual practice. And people practice meditation, and they practice chanting, they practice things which will calm them down in a world that is really crazy. So my favorite room in this home, our home where we've lived since 1988, is the little prayer room that comes off of our bedroom. That's just my little corner of the world where everything is perfect. And it's there me personally, and I know Stephen has a practice too, where we ask for guidance. You know, we ask for, you know, guide us on the path so we can, you know, have a good day here, so we can put positivity into the world. It's our job. It's my job to make myself happy.
Absolutely.
And to use the gifts that we were given. I honestly have not, don't misunderstand me. There are times I get very depressed and very despondent and very hopeless. Everybody does. And that's when, and I too, I heard you say that in the beginning of, we weren't on air yet, but we were chatting, learning to ask for help, learning to be honest with yourself, learning to say, I'm flawed, you know, I screwed up. And that's the beautiful thing about being married for as long as we've been married, is like, you know, you realize in your partnership and your friendship, we were given great advice, marry your best friend. And in all marriages, there's three things, and they're not growing equally. This is from a Native American woman named Twyla Niditch. Sounded like a medicine woman. She said, in all marriages, there's two individuals in the relationship, and they are not growing necessarily at the same time. So there's times when you say to your partner, time out, I need to go off for a few weeks for myself, just need to just be myself, you know, like not be married to you, like, you know, in mentality all the time. No, I don't mean getting divorced. I just mean, you know, I just need to go. You need to go. Then there's times you go, well, boy, our relationship's really withering in the vine. We haven't done anything. We're bickering with each other. We're, you know, like not having any fun. Pay attention to the relationship. So that has kept us married for 34 years. Plus what I was starting to say, and then as usual, sidetrack myself. In the safety of a relationship, a loving, nurturing relationship, our flaws, our negative stuff, our weaknesses, the things where we're not strong, you're forgiven that, hopefully. And that gives you an opportunity to grow.
You know, it's interesting as I get to know you more and hear you speak, how much in common we actually have. And I think when people get to know each other, um, they start to realize that people are human.
Yes.
Sometimes you look at other people and you think, God, they're so special, what's wrong with me? But when you talk to people and really communicate, some of the things we have in common, we were both married previously and divorced. We both found wonderful second marriages. You're going to be married 34 years.
35.
35. Ah, I'm going to be married 31 next week. The first time I did exactly what my parents wanted me to do.
Right.
I married a Jewish dentist. It didn't work. This time I married a non-Jewish salesman. My mother actually sat Shiva for me.
Oh,
But now my husband is more perfect than I will ever be in her eyes. So I mean that all turned around. But for years, we too, we were best friends. Okay, and in some ways we were more friends than we were lovers.
Right.
And I think that's really what kept us together. And you're right.
And then
He-
I'm sorry.
He has his flaws, I have my flaws, but you work on those things.
Sure.
The same thing with your children. You know, I know when I was younger, I always thought that once you had your children are going to be perfect. You're always going to love everything that they do. It's not true.
No.
You love them,
Sure.
but they're not perfect, and they've got their flaws as well. We got to remember that that's what society is like, but it doesn't mean that we have to hate. It doesn't mean that we have to dislike. It just means that we have to learn how
Right.
to work together to be tolerant. If your neighbor's walking down the street and they tell you they don't like your garden, you're just going to let them say they don't like your garden. And the next one who walks by who says they like your garden, you're going to say thank you. It can be as easy as that.
Right. Yeah, my daughter, my oldest daughter gave me a book to read one time. It was called Better Off. And it was about a gentleman he was in an engineering program at MIT, and his focus was on looking at technology from the focus of whether something's appropriate or necessary to accomplish a certain task. Because sometimes innovation happens merely because someone wants to sell somebody a new product that's ostensibly better than the last one, right? So he was looking at ways to, if something's, the old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it, So he got married to a woman he knew, and then they decided that as part of his dissertation, he was going to move to a rural community. And he never reveals in the book what the community was, but I have a feeling it was either like an Amish or a Mennonite community. People who turn away from technology, like in terms of electric utilities and that kind of thing. And the whole upshot of the book was that by being in community with people and having to rely on not the technology necessarily, but on each other to help sustain everybody's life in community, that's where he formed these wonderful friendships and bonds. You always hear of the barn racings where the community comes together to build somebody a barn. But there's even little things where he had to clear a drainage ditch by his property, and his neighbor came to help him. And in the course of a few days, they worked together on this project and were able to form a friendship that was just very close. And it was just because they shared the experience of doing this thing together. There's such a drive. You hear people like the Koch brothers who are, their family was instrumental in starting the Libertarian Party. And this whole attitude of every man, woman, and child for themselves, and and everyone's got to have a lawnmower. Everyone's got to have their own, whatever it is. The whole sense of community. I think it's what you're talking about earlier about sitting on the front porch and talking to the neighbors and being outside.
And helping raise their children,
Right.
Oh, you get home, I'm talking to your mother.
I mean, there's some real craziness out there, and part of it is directly related to the way that the environment that we live in. I mean, people are afraid. They're afraid to let their kids play outside. When I was growing up in Lakewood in the 70s, my parents would, or the late 60s, my parents would let us ride for hours on our bikes unsupervised. They didn't worry that we were going to get abducted or accosted somehow, and so I think there's just a lot of fear, and people are sort of holed up in their homes, and then they're also struggling to make a living, so they're so busy doing that they don't really have time for the other things that give a life quality.
Gee, I think it's a plot.
Yes.
Nah.
Could it be? Let's all line of Prozac.
Well, I guess what I was going to say is that I think people in my daughter's generation now, they're in their late 30s, early 40s, yeah.
27
I don't know if they want me telling that, but I think that people of this age are starting to question what they value.
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to keep? And some people really they just want to they want to have a certain lifestyle. They like all the material trappings of a certain lifestyle. But I think there's a lot of people who are really starting to think about, because of the economic realities of the time we're living in, they're starting to think about what they truly value, how they want to spend their time, what their quality of life is. These are very important transformative issues that I think our younger generation is starting to look at. And I think, unfortunately, almost out of necessity, because of the way.
Well, it hasn't made people happy. Having things doesn't make you happy. And spending all your working labor to wind up being in massive debt, which was, what happened out of the 80s, like buy now, pay later.
Right.
And then for the rest of your life you're paying
You're
off this
indebted to
loan, that.
somebody,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
People are saying this is not the quality of life that I have, and it is like turning a switch. The decision to say I'm going to take some control over my life. I'm sure, there's people like myself who could be medicated, to be honest with you. But the truth is, I'd rather have a little bit of the hills and the valleys. I would. And I also know people say, well, I found it as an artist, like if I took an antidepressant, and it's not like I haven't at times in my life, but if I took this antidepressant, I didn't want to lose I was afraid I would lose my artistic edge. And now listen, everybody's different.
Right.
Everybody needs to find the diet that works for them, the exercise that works for them, the people that work for them, the drugs that work for them, whatever it is. Everybody, that's living. That's the process of being on your journey. So for me, the transformation is we were brought up to believe a certain way. It's the culture, it's the way of the world, it's the way of industrialized nations to keep order, to keep it from chaos. On the other hand, there have been losses. Not when I said that digging in the earth has been being proven to be an antidepressant. Well, if you can't grow things, if you're living in an apartment complex with thousands of other people, and you're eating food that's filled with chemicals and filled with preservatives and everything, we've gotten extremely unhealthy in every way.
Well, even I mean, there's a way around that. I mean, my guitar teacher actually has created a whole garden on the back porch of his house. It's a second floor porch in containers. So I mean, there's ways to do it.
Absolutely.
That's even if you don't have a wonderful piece of property like we do.
So for me personally, when I say the transformation generation, the message is that being a round peg in a square hole, being a round. What?
A round peg in a square hole.
Okay, Mrs. Malaprop. Thanks, Dad. That the people who felt so left out, we really are actually the leadership of what's to come. We've lived long enough. We've lived long enough to know we're the perfect example of being the working poor, so
Right.
to speak. We didn't have white collar jobs. We could have. We were given those opportunities. We both went to college. I did get a degree,
Right.
in communications. Stephen got a degree in culinary arts. We've used those things, but never made great careers out of them. And the truth is, for me, I have to sing. I have to sing. You know, my grandfather was a chazan, and I was picking my girlfriend up
Which
at
is
the
a cantor.
a cancer.
Yeah.
Well,
In
no,
a-
I
in
know
a
that
synagogue,
Carrie
right.
knows that.
Right.
I was picking my girlfriend up at the airport the other day, and I had stopped to pick her up, and I knew I wasn't, you're not supposed to park, and we had to run in to tell her that I was there, and I came back, and a policeman starts walking towards me, and I said, oh gosh, he's going to give me a ticket now, and I said, sorry, officer, and he said, was that you singing? And I said, oh, I was singing, and he said, yeah. I said, I didn't even, I wasn't even aware I was singing. And then he said, well, that really means then the Spirit was really coming through you. If you didn't even know you were singing.
Yeah.
And then we got in this great conversation. We both were talking about Lily Dale and all this. It was just so much fun. My girlfriend comes out, and she's like, what's going on? And I said, it was just being, I know how it feels to be free. And that's when you're unfettered and you are being yourself.
Exactly.
And nobody can tell you, they can. They tried. Evie, sit down, be quiet, be a lady, That's when I grew up, in the 50s and stuff like that. Sorry, I colored outside of the lines. Now I'm a little calmer, but I color, because coloring is healthy for us, just as a relaxing thing to do. But I think this is one of the things that happens when you get older is you sort of just don't care. I'm not out to offend anybody. I know the rules, and but I just I need to live a creative, expressive, empathetic, compassionate life. That's who we are. We're both very nurturing people.
Yeah, I think that, the first thing I want to say, and I'd like to respond to what you were just saying too, but we read Yes Magazine, which is a wonderful alternative publication that really does highlight the positive things that are happening in the country and around the world, and it's a great antidote when you feel despondent to pick that magazine up and to see how people are working in community. It's not necessarily covered by the media at large, but there are all these pockets of people who are just trying to figure out alternatives to the old ways, and that gives a lot of hope. We were just at, Evie mentioned Lilydale, we were just there for their opening ceremonies, and they had the Tibetan monks, I can't remember the monastery, but it's where the Dalai Lama resides. And they go out in groups and produce these wonderful sand mandalas with colored crystals. It's a very elaborate process. It takes a couple of days for them to complete. But what they're highlighting is the impermanence of life. It's a meditation for them, and they create this beautiful mandala which sort of encompasses on many different levels images which help promote peace and harmony in the world.
They do this by, excuse me, let me just say, they do this by tapping crystals.
No, it's a funnel.
It's a funnel.
Funnel that's filled with little tiny crystals, colored crystals, and they have a stylus which they vibrate the funnel with, and it lays down these very fine
We'll
beads
show you.
of
We
Wow.
can't do it on the radio.
Yeah.
On the podcast, we'll show you.
But the overall
Amazing.
effect is these monks standing around a table, very close together, like head to head, and this tapping sound.
For
And they
2
produce this
days.
beautiful mandala, and then at the end they have a ceremony. They wipe it all into a pile and take it in a procession. They take it to a body of water, and they disperse it into the waterway. And this is a symbol not only of the impermanence of life, but also that they're taking intentionally this thing that they've created and dispersing the intent into the waterways of the world so that it can flow, obviously throughout the whole world, right? But I think, when you're talking about, you get to a certain age where you just sort of say, I don't care anymore. I've got to get on with it. I think that, people in earlier generations didn't expect to live as long. My father taught, he's 92, he just had his birthday in June. He talked about how he never expected to be here this long. But even before them, people's life expectancy was a lot shorter, and I think they got on with the business of living because they knew that they were kind of running out of time.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think we're living longer, unless you experience something in your life where you actually felt like your life had been threatened. There are some people who are just very internally motivated. They know that their time's limited and that they're going to do something with the time they have. Other people are kind of lulled into this false sense of security. Well, I'm going to be young forever. I'm going to live forever. I have all the time in the world. But I think when you get to that point where you're looking back, you're looking forward, and you're saying, what have I done to make a difference? What can I do to make a difference? And you start to really focus on those issues, and it has more. You see this mandala being created, and the impermanence of it. Just being wiped away after all this effort. You die, and your possessions become dispersed. All the material things that you've accumulated. We watched it happen next door when our neighbor died. And they had an estate sale, and then everything else that wasn't sold got thrown into a dumpster and taken away, even after people had come and bought things, and people were able to get some more use out of them. But you see the whole, and this is what I was talking about earlier, the value of what am I striving for? Is it to accumulate all these things? Is that what is the mark of my success in the world, or is it who the relationships I've formed in my life, the ways that I've affected the immediate community around me, the way that I've impacted my children, my family, my neighbors. These are the things I think that people are starting to look at. They're getting tired of being on that treadmill where they're trying to accumulate things that someone else is telling them are important for them to be happy and to look like they're successful.
Well, hopefully we can start looking at this at a much younger age rather than waiting until we're in our 50s and 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
When I look back and I say, wow, it took me until, almost my 64th birthday to say, oh my gosh, I don't even know what it means to be happy.
Yeah.
That was a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But I think that now that I realize what I missed out on, and you now realize what there is to offer in this world, and you've known it for a long time, but maybe you just didn't express it the way you are now.
I think I observed a lot. I think I noticed that as a person, as a public person, I present as very confident, filled with energy, great ideas. That does not preclude being shy. And certainly as a young person, it doesn't preclude being shy, insecure, all those things as a younger person, well into younger, being into your 30s. Where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? Because we're taught we're supposed to fit in, but many of us don't fit in. So,
well, I don't think anybody fits in, because if you talk to even the most popular person,
they'll tell you the same thing.
You'll hear the same thing.
That's right.
You hear from these beautiful actresses and actors. They'll say that some of them will say, "I can't get a date." What do you mean you can't get a date? Look how beautiful you are. Look how handsome you are. And it's no. I can't get a date because people think I'm untouchable. Okay? So I think we all are uncomfortable. And I think once we can get to that point and say, we're all the same.
But here's too is the thing is like, I see this now in an acquaintance of mine, because I was the same way. The triggers that are being pushed in me or reminded me are a time of my life when the hole in me was so deep that nobody would get near me with a 10-foot pole, because they could just feel that, oh my God, that woman is so needy, that woman is so messed up, like that there's nothing, and they would run in the opposite direction. Versus once you start finding that everybody's got something, some kind of gift, some kind of talent,
Right.
certainly self-worth. Once that settles in, it literally reverses. You become, when you know yourself,
Right.
warts and all, literally, when you know yourself, and love yourself, and say, I'm here for a reason. I was created for a reason. Whatever your concept of a higher power, God, is, it doesn't preclude that. You get in touch with that, it reverses that. Then you become, the light within you is attractive. This is what the law of attraction is. We talked about this when we
Right.
said we felt like we had a kinship.
Right.
Even though we're not blood related, our experience in our families of origin from Detroit, our experiences were similar as how we were integrated. Stephen too, how we fit into, we were the space cadets. We were the ones that, oh my gosh, I don't know what's wrong with her, blah, 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 yada, yada. Until, like I say, you get to this point, and now I recognize within myself, I have something to say. My husband has things to say and teach. We've learned something in these 60 and 68, 67, 68 years respectively. And it's time to give back. And the world needs what we have, which is, we'll show you how to grow food. I want a web series, At Home with Eve and Stephen. That's what I want. We can just be ourselves. Come on, honey, we're going to teach. And, get kids over here. Teach them how to cook. Eating is not getting something out of a box. It's
Right.
really not.
Yeah.
It's like...
Even the whole process of getting together and making a meal
Yes.
becomes community, and it's a relationship building experience.
Unless you're territorial in the kitchen, Stephen. And then it's
That's true. Yeah.
Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this out for today.
Okay.
And what everybody is going to hear is, as I close it out, I'm going to play a couple of your songs from your CD. And I will lead them to your website so that if they have an interest, which of course they're going to,
Absolutely.
they will know how to get the CD.
And our Facebook page, we're Even Stephen on Facebook too.
And I will have that all listed on the blog
Good.
so that they know how to find you.
Yes.
And
Please do.
we're going to come back. And you said something about wanting to do a series about cooking.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that as soon as we close off.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody.